Always through strategic communication and conversation with Leigh Diffey. This is the second time Mark has been here, and it's always been a full house. It's a pleasure for me to host. Anytime you write a book, now you have a home here at the Booksmiths Shoppe. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming and giving a warm welcome, actually, to both of them, Leigh and Mark, for this discussion.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It means the world to me and to Leigh to spend a little bit of time with you. I do want to start with a special thanks to Michelle Smith at the Booksmiths. Is this the most amazing bookstore here? And let's give her a hand. Curiosity in the summer. Thank you for providing a home for all of us local authors. So I want to do two quick things. One is talk a little bit about the book, but first I want to introduce Leigh Diffey with NBC Sports. You know him having watched the Winter Olympics in Milan, or the Summer Olympics in Paris, or NASCAR on NBC Sports, or the World Track and Field Championships. This is the voice of racing and speed before ABC Sports. But more importantly to me, this is my friend. We were blessed to share a driveway. Ange and I were blessed to share a driveway with Leigh and Michaela. Or are you Michaela? There she is back there. And their two wonderful sons in Richfield. And so that's how we got to know him. I had a big wheel and I said, let's race, Leigh. And he said, let's give it a shot. He won. Driveway's a little long for me, but he still had a lot of fun.
I did take you for a ride in a McLaren.
He did. Yeah. Totally unexpected. It was awesome. Awesome. So Leigh's going to say a little bit more about himself, but I want to start with just a little bit of a background on the book. So we wrote, when I say we, Jon Stemmle is my co-author for engaging employees through strategic communication. Jon is the head of the Department of Strategic Comms at the University of Missouri School of Journalism. I'm an adjunct there. I teach classes on employee communications in the world of strategic comms. But Jon and I wrote this book during COVID when I lost most of my clients overnight when everything shut down and everybody was cutting their budgets. And I'm like, I've had this idea I'd really like to kind of pursue. And we did our research and found that out of 100 programs and communications in the United States, not one school offered a full semester course on employee communications. And yet, this is a field that is exploding with opportunities for people who want to be communicators. I'm going to talk about other folks who benefit from the book. But we said we made the case. Rutledge said, write the book. We wrote it. It did well enough that they said 3 years later, we'd like you to do a second edition. I learned that only about 15% of the textbooks are asked to do a second edition. So it really was an honor for Jon and I to take a fresh look at what had happened even in the 3 or 4 years since we wrote the first edition, and a lot had changed. So in this new book, there are two additional chapters. One is on crisis communications and how you engage employees as critical as stakeholders when you're managing through a crisis or preparing for one. And the second chapter at the very end is on artificial intelligence. And so we had the benefit of doing 3 years of research, both in terms of surveys among communicators across the globe, and doing 3 yearly white papers, research that basically talked about the landscape and what was changing in the world of AI that was affecting employee communicators. So we took a look at applications that they were using. We looked at how much time they were saving. We looked at whether they were going to be doing strategic applications for AI or simply using it for productivity, and we learned a ton about that. So that's the difference in the new book. It's we also updated case studies from across the globe, and we have profiles in every chapter of communicators literally in countries all over the world. And that was all part of our update. The case studies in the book have all been recognized internationally, either by the Public Relations Society of America or the International Association of Business Communicators. So these are high qualified, highly credentialed case studies that we chose for the book to illustrate the concepts that each chapter has. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Leigh to talk about his world. And you might be saying, why would employee communications and the world of racing, how would it interact? And the more Leigh and I talked about, the more we realized that whether you are communicating to an organization, or you're communicating to a pit crew, or you're communicating across athletes and athletic directors and trainers and coaches, it's still the same concepts. You need to understand how to be an effective communicator in all those situations. So Leigh, all you.
Yes, very, very much so. And the The majority of my body of work is in motor racing, and I fully acknowledge that everyone's not into auto racing, but the other side of it is the Olympics and track and field and various other sports. And when we do a live broadcast, the production can be run from here in Stamford at NBC Sports headquarters, or typically it's on site at the venue. And we're up in the broadcast booth. The production trucks are down below, somewhere in the stadium, usually on the outside of the stadium. And there's a couple of hundred people on the crew. So I can be communicating not only to the television audience, but I need to be, and my teammates need to be communicating with the director, the producer, the assistant to the director, audio, the tape room that rolls replays. And when people come and visit one of our live broadcasts, they're amazed at how many people are involved and how almost separated it is. And we're not quite often not talking a lot of face to face. So the message and the way that you talk and the message that you're delivering is so important. And all of what we do is communication. So both for me, outwardly to the viewing audience in America and around the world, but internally, most importantly, and I always describe it, it's like a symphony. So everybody's playing their own instrument, but to do that, we've got to be communicating the right way. So it comes in perfectly like that. And we don't really have months or weeks or days to deal with. We deal in seconds. And if you get it wrong, you as the viewing audience know it instantly. And so that brings with it an inherent responsibility and actual added weight and gravity. And so therefore, I think a lot of my peers, without us even knowing it, know that they have to be good communicators. And it almost happens through osmosis. And when it doesn't happen correctly, that's when it gets brought to your attention. So I've been fortunate to work in 3 different countries in the world. I started in Australia, then I went to the United Kingdom, and then I came here to the United States in 2002. And what resonated with me with the book was a couple of chapters in particular. Chapter 4, Change Communication, and Chapter 8, Storytelling, because storytelling is my life, and change communication, I've lived through that on a grand scale in Australia with Network 10, in the United Kingdom with the BBC, and right here in America with NBC Sports. So we can elaborate on that later, but Mark has been a huge influence on not only our family, but for me professionally. He watches what I do. He offers a good critique, but also away from television, I'm really excited developing a side of my career that is keynote speaking. I have a keynote presentation, and Mark, through what he's done with this book, has been a wonderful guide passage for me, and holding my hand and to follow that path of correct, impactful, precise communication has really helped me with my keynote presentations as well. So
Thank you, Leigh. So one last note, then I'm going to have a little conversation with Leigh, and then it's going to be your turn to ask questions. And if you don't have questions to ask, you should know Michelle's going to lock the door to leave all 4 hours. There's only one key to that for her. So be thinking about your question. All right, so one thing I just wanted to say about the book is, while it was originally intended to educate a new generation of employee communicators, its application we're learning, and I won't say sort of surprisingly, but it is important to say, its application goes beyond just people who practice communication. Leaders who want their organizations to follow them, and once they have a vision, hopefully a clear vision, and a plan to get there, have to have communications in their arsenal to engage their internal stakeholders to go with them. And it doesn't matter whether you're the CEO or you're a manager of a department or a supervisor someplace, it doesn't matter. The concepts in this book are very applicable to whoever you are and whatever you're doing at any stage of your life and career. So we've had some progress in getting this into some business schools as well as some general communication schools, because the C-suite is beginning to recognize, hey, maybe we do need to know a little bit more about employee engagement and communications in order to lead our organizations. And then the last the target, if you will, the last audience for us is everybody. Because when you think about your communications, whether it's with a spouse or a child or a grandchild or a sister, but whoever it is, the concept of communications that are in this book storytelling. Hey, how's storytelling come to help me convince someone to do something? Change management. I need my kid to stop doing X and start doing Y. Okay, the principles in this book are very much applicable to that situation or to any relationship that you have. So I would say 90% of the book has content that is applicable to all people, to communicators, and to leaders who aspire to have greater success in their careers.